Hello, baby dolls. We're going to look at the PulseX to Pulse ratio and what might happen at launch. Right now, you're looking deep into my 4 hearts of friendship and justice. And now we'll shrink them and then enlarge them and then shrink them again. And we're going to go down. Okay, so I have constructed a chart for you and what it's actually going to look at. See, I've made a reply here to a friend and I went through the ratios, but after going through this, I realized it's a bit complicated because I can see all this in my head, but it's just so much easier if I make a video and I show you exactly what I'm talking about. So he asked, right? So Mr. Hex Helper and Mr. Space Unicorn, they were talking about, what ratio would you sell one for the other, like PulseX and Pulse. And because there's no US dollar value, you have to go off the ratios. But everybody just chill out. Please fix your posture right now. All right. You can see my chair swiveling. Can you hear it swiveling? All right. We're sitting up straight. Remember, it's very likely you're not actually going to get a good price. Okay. It's pretty likely. Not because of the origin address, pink elephant, African priest himself, which may or may not exist, or be a pet duck named Greg, okay? But probably because there's going to be no liquidity. Who is going to give you these prices I'm going to show you right now? Let's go. So the first one, let's talk about, you got to look at two sides, right? You have Pulse and you have PulseX. We're going to go through two examples here, right? Obviously, you're going to use your PulseX to buy Pulse, or the other way, using your Pulse to buy PulseX. So all you're doing is trading one chart, okay? So what I want you to know is when we, and by we, I mean me, denominate any of these ratios and everything, you always make the base the big daddy, okay? Just like how, when we chart Bitcoin, we do BTC USD. USD is the big daddy, okay? When we do the ETH BTC ratio, Bitcoin is the big daddy, right? If you want to look at, say, XRP to ETH, ETH is the big daddy, okay? So you always want to look at the big daddy. That's your base. That's what you want the denominator to be, right? So on PulseChain, everything is going to be base of PLS. So you're going to have PHEX PLS. You're going to have PulseX to PLS. You get me? You're going to have the incentive token to PLS. All of these. Except, right, you're going to do PLS to USDC. Because that's how we chart it. We don't do the inverse of that. Can you imagine if we charted 1 divided by Bitcoin every time? It would be 0.00000 and so on, okay? So this is what we do. We always make the big daddy. The big daddy is always the base, okay? Always. So that's why when you see a slash here, that's the base, PLS. So this chart is going to be PulseX to PLS, all right? Now, I've drawn this quick chart here for you to show you, right? Going a long time, we're going to have time, okay, on the right-hand side. And this is going to be PulseX to Pulse. This is what it's actually going to look like on the website, okay, on PulseX, this pool ratio. So we are looking at the ratios, right? So I'm just going to give you some very generic ratios that the current crypto market is using to value Uniswap to Ethereum, to value PancakeSwap to Binance, and other DEXs, okay? So the DEX to the big daddy. So remember, PulseX is the DEX, Pulse is the big daddy. So in my example, I said with this ratio, you're going to basically sell above 10 to 1, all right? Sorry, we'll do the other way first, right? Not to confuse us. So we'll do, if you basically open up your PulseX, your trading field, if they give you 2 PLSX, we'll give you 1 PLS, okay? You basically probably want to give away your PulseX, all right? You want to buy Pulse if they give you that, okay? So, and obviously 1 to 1 is obviously a better price than that. That's very unlikely, right? Very unlikely people were going to give you 1 PulseX to 1 Pulse, okay? So this would be a ratio of 2 to 1. So we're going to go to this price chart, and here is, let's move this to the side. This is going to be a 2 here on the left-hand side. So you can see the price, right? The price, actually, it's gonna see it here, right? So here's 2. Okay, here is 2. And if we want, remember, this is going to be a log chart. Here's where 1's going to be. And then here's where 0.5 is going to be. And right at the bottom, here is where 0.1 is going to be. Okay, right here. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just make this. It's going to look like a log chart because you're going to have to use a log chart, right? So if this chart gives you 2 or higher, you are going to sell. So up here, all right? So if the chart price is up here, you will probably sell. Most people will sell. I already know everyone is. The only reason why I'm even happy to even share this with you is I know, like, the chances of us getting this, friends, is very, very unlikely. Let's just be honest, okay? Just based off how many people sacrifice for Pulse versus PulseChain, there's a huge difference. 40,000 versus 140,000. So you get the point, right? So there's going to be such a big deviation. I don't think people will give you Pulse that cheap at the start. So remember, if you're selling this chart at the top, what does it mean? It means they've made your PulseX expensive and they've made Pulse cheap. All right. So if you were to sell up here, okay, so up here, if you do your transaction, you basically execute, you have sold your PulseX for Pulse. So you've given them 2 PulseX, you've received 1 Pulse. All right. That's what it is. So remember, because the big daddy is the PLS base here, that's what you are collecting on your right-hand side, okay? That's what number you're dealing with, all right? Do you know how, like, in BTC USD chart, we're looking at dollars on the right-hand side, right, for Bitcoin. But what is this? This is PulseX to Pulse chart. So we're looking at Pulse unity, all right? So if you are exchanging at this price, if it's 2 to 1, right, you probably don't want to buy. That's what I'm saying, okay? You don't want to buy 2 PulseX for 1. Sorry, other way around, right? No, sorry, that's right. That's right. See, I know these ratios are confusing, right? You don't want to give away 2 PulseX up here for, you don't want to be, yes, for a unit of PLS, all right? So when we go down, this would probably be, so I'm going to, let's do this in nice colors so you actually can see. So you probably, up here, let's just make this red. This is the sell zone, all right? We're going to make this red. This would probably be up here, sell PLSX into PLS, all right? So up here, this is what you would want. Anything and higher, okay? Anything and higher, anywhere up here, all right? That would be a sell zone. What about the other way around? What if, instead of PulseX getting so high, what if it trades too cheap, right? The inverse, okay? So down here. Well, I use the ratio of just 10 to 1, okay? That is where I think, all right, you know, yeah, you might even say 8 to 1. So if you just do 1 divided by 8, 1 divided by 8, you get 0.125. Yeah, so it's around here, you know, 8 to 1, 10 to 1. So if the ratio trades down here, you are just going to be buying, okay? Because you're like, whoa, I know PulseX, maybe it's not as good as Pulse, according to the masses, but I don't think it's like this bad, right? You know, you guys are underestimating it, okay? So this is what you would do. You'd be buying it right here. And I've got the colors here, nice and neat, all right? So that's what the chart is going to be. But you don't know what it's going to happen, right? You don't know where it's going to open. You don't know where the volume is going to start. Now, when it sets, someone's going to have to set the ratio at the beginning. But maybe the origin address, the like original pet duck named Greg, whatever he, she, they, them, or Greg decides to do, they might just let the free market like activate for the first 48 hours, right? So I don't know if the origin address is going to reveal, right, their hand at the beginning, whatever ratio they want to set. They might just let people ruin themselves, okay? I'm only speculating this because honestly, that's what I will do, okay? That's what I will do. You know why? Because I've been seeing on Twitter that there are paper hands out there. I've been seeing on Discord and Telegram that there are some people who are more than happy to get rid of their Pulse and PulseX for like, you know, below sacrifice price, you know, and you've seen that too, haven't you? A lot of weak hands, and you've heard everybody say, oh, it's going to be a big dump, everyone's going to get out. Well, let's see if they're there, right? That's what we do. So in the first 48 hours, there's no USD price. You let them do that. Maybe people just want to panic out, okay? So this video is specifically for the PulseX to Pulse ratio chart. We might do one on the PHEX one, but I would rather stay away a bit from that one because that's definitely going to be too messy, you know, because people are going to be buying hex for the PHEX and you don't know about the EHEX to PHEX ratio. That's going to be the issue, all right? There's going to be, you're going to have to assume parity, but, you know, what if you get in too early and then we can sell after you? That's the problem. The advantage with PulseX and Pulse here is there's only one coin here, okay? There's no economic energy split. There's no ratios of each coin, right? It's just 1-to-1. You know, it's the DEX to the layer 1 chain. The DEX, PulseX to the layer 1 chain. So this would be your zones, right? So you would think, hey, if it got down here, I'd buy it, right? I'd buy PulseX. And if it got up here, you would sell your PulseX, right? And if you were to ask me, hey, you'd say, hey, please, I know you have a straight posture today and you're wearing socks, black and green color. Where do I think they're probably going to land, okay? I think they're probably going to land around the 4-to-1, okay? Now, 4-to-1, I know it looks, because it's a log chart, it doesn't really do it justice, right? But a 4-to-1 would be around here, right? So 0.25. So it would be exactly here. I'm going to make this a different color. So 0.25. So what color should we do, friends? Let's do this hot purple. Let's do this a hot purple. So we see this is, we'll change the text color. So we can actually see this is where I think people kind of feel like what it should be, right? Now, if you look at PancakeSwap and how other dexes are done, okay, other layer 1 chains, not Ethereum, by the way, because Ethereum's got a huge monetary premium, all right? So if you look at them, it's about 8-to-1 to 10-to-1, okay? It's about that. That's where around fair value is, okay? However, most of them don't have much volume, and most of them, no one knows what they're doing, and they don't have PulseX's buy and burn. But that's what I'm just letting you know. Communication, honesty, friendship, that's the key. They value around 8 to 10-to-1. So they actually value it down here, which is huge, right? I mean, that's like, you know, that's insane. Now, you got to see, you got to think, how do we get there? How do we get to this 10-to-1 ratio? Because you can get to this ratio, by the way, by your PLS opens, like, you know, opens mean, you know, in the first 2 to 3 days where it's trading, opens and settles at day 1 sack price. So that is also a possibility with PulseX opens and settles minus 90% down from day 1 sack. Okay, this is possible. Okay, I know you don't like seeing this, but I'm just letting you know, if the market, the collective mindset of everybody, if they valued PulseX based off the guessed volume and current volume of how the ratios are set between the layer 1 chain and the DEX, that's what happens to us. If this is what's going to happen, friends. I know you don't like it. I don't like seeing this either, but that's just a reality. It's possible, okay? And if it's not that, maybe it's like minus 80% down, okay? Right, maybe there's some, oh, you know, we shouldn't be this low. That's possible. However, what about the other way? See, everybody's speaking about this. This is why I'm saying, friends. Firstly, the pet duck, Greg, who controls the origin address, he knows, okay, and he's friends with Richard Hart. So he knows people are like this. He knows about these ratios. That's why I think Greg wants to time the launch. I think Greg wants to launch when Bitcoin and Ethereum have a higher fair value. You know why? Compare that to this, friends. I'm going to show you this. All right, I'm going to give you another scenario. Another scenario to get this, like 10-to-1 or 8-to-1 ratio, is PLS opens up 8x from day 1 sack. PLSX opens up at 0x from day 1 sack. All right. Compare these two. All right. Look at this. Let's get my arrow friendship here. So the ratios are around the same. So you could make this 10x. You know, if we want to do this 10x. If the market really wants to be naughty to us, we can do that. Okay. So these are the same ratios, but we've changed the US dollar price. In scenario A, you get your ratio, but what happens is Pulse is break even for day one sacrifices, and PulseX is minus 80 to minus 90%. It's clobbered. Okay. So that sucks, right? Now, the other scenario, you know, let's say Bitcoin's above 30,000. Let's say Ethereum's above 2,000. Let's say there's a Hex documentary that's coming out. Let's say there's more marketing. Let's say other influencers shield. Let's say the network effect is beaming. You know, you tick all of them off. Maybe when Pulse opens, the market wants to give it a fair value of 10x higher than day one sacrifice. This would put it at about, if you look at market caps, right, about 6.7 billion, right? Which is not too wild, man, right? 6.7 billion. Now, if 6.7 billion when Bitcoin was at 15K and Ethereum's at, you know, $1,000 about to clobber the lows a few months ago, yeah, you're looking at 6.7 billion. Like, that's a big number to start. But now sentiment's changed. The Bitcoin halving is going to be around a year from now. You get the point, right? More positive sentiment. You know, and what if CPI keeps coming down? The rate cuts on the agenda. You can just see how the sentiment, macro, and everything starts shifting, right? And the dark clouds disappear. So we get the same ratio. There's just a different USD quote price. But you're not going to know what the USD quote price is really going to be. I can kind of guess for you based off how well Hex is doing. But even then, there really is no guarantee because of those ratios, right? So I've explained to you right now what the two different worlds can be. You know, we can get the poo-poo world to get the ratios, or we get the great world. Well, if you trade a ratio, the good thing is it doesn't matter what the US dollar price is doing today, because you and me, we're friends still, right? And I am wearing socks, and yes, my posture is straight. We're going to be holding for 2025 anyway, all right? So it doesn't matter what the ratio is, right? It's just like in ETH BTC. If they want to sell ETH BTC down to 3%, right? So ETH is 3% of Bitcoin's price, and you think one day it's going to be 20%. It doesn't matter what the US dollar price is today, man. You're holding till that thesis plays out many years from now. It's the same thing with here. So if people want to panic and see, this one's unlikely, right? So this one, that's why I say, well, almost scratch this one. If people really want to give you 2 PLSX equals 1 Pulse, obviously most people will be selling up here, right? They will. But now you got to think about, what about how low would you buy it, right? How low would you buy it and how much would you do? I've got this number, 0.1, you know. If it's 8 to 1, obviously, maybe you can do a bit. Maybe that's still cheap for you, right? Maybe say, hey, man, I think that's a good punt. And you know why, right? So you might even say 8 to 1 is a good punt. So if the market opens down at 0.25 for this ratio, then you might say, hey, I'm going to take like 25% of my PulseX and buy Pulse, all right? Don't do all of it. Don't be stupid, but you might buy a bit more. You might use your Pulse to buy PulseX down here. And the theory is you go, well, we only have a big bull market ahead of us. So you think, okay, there's going to be, risk is only going to be added on from here. There's going to be more swapping of assets and volume and trading and DEXs, and probably Uniswap is going to go to 100 billion market cap in the next crypto cycle. And a lot of these centralized exchanges are poopy faces. So, you know, you can draw up this theory for yourself and go, well, you know, so it makes sense. PulseX will be a higher beta reward on Pulse succeeding. And it's probably true, man. It's probably true. So this is one way to think about it, you know, and you can do that. But like I said, don't go all in. Don't go all in. You just don't know. You know what the market's going to do, right? Because, you know what? You don't know, friendly sirs and madams, okay? If I just quickly just have an imaginary chart here. This is the Pulse. I'm going to draw the Pulse USD chart, okay? So you don't know what might happen. So it might be like this, okay? So this is, in green line is going to be Pulse, okay? So maybe Pulse, it launches up and down, pump and dump, comes down, and then it shoots up, right? Maybe that happens. This next line I'm going to draw is PulseX, okay? Maybe PulseX follows it, and then as Pulse is mooning, it's possible PulseX can't go up as much, all right? It's possible. You see that? See how it's lagging under this green line? And so this is what happens in other crypto markets and spreads, right? So what happens is the Pulse could, after it moonshots, let's say it does a 30x or 50x or something, then it settles in this part, right? It starts settling, going sideways. And in this part is a rotation. People rotate their money. They go, oh, PulseChain is here to stay. Where can I put my money? And what ends up happening is then they rotate to say PulseX. Then PulseX might overshoot. All right. So what I've described to you is a very common scenario. Have you noticed this is what Bitcoin does with the crypto altcoins? You know, this is in the previous 3 cycles, right? So, you know, Bitcoin would rally, then it would go sideways. And then because of the psychological wealth effect, people would then rotate around. They go, hey, where do I put my money, right? So, you know, but the money didn't come directly into the crypto altcoins at the start. Okay, but now they are. Now, remember, we're now like a later cycle. We're in cycle number 4 for Bitcoin. There's no more euphoria in it, right? So we don't know what's going to happen with Pulse and PulseX. It's possible that, you know, only Pulse gets listed on OKEx and Binance. We don't know. What if Pulse only gets listed there and they don't want to list PulseX? So Pulse is their gateway, right? So maybe Pulse is like the torpedo, the spear that goes up and then money rotates, okay? So all these different scenarios can play out. At the end of the day, you just got to hold, because if they give us, let's go back to this chart. If they give us a really juicy price, I promise you, it's not going to sit here for like a day. It's probably going to be weeks, months. I'll be posting about it. No one understands the game. And then this ratio, because if you buy this ratio, right, you want to make more Pulse, okay? So let's draw this. So if you buy the ratio, let's say that ratio comes in, these are weeks and months, and it just stays down here. If you buy, right, if you buy like down here, you're hoping one day, say the bull market comes, Bitcoin goes to 80, 90K, 100K, Ethereum goes to 8, 9, 10K, Hex goes over $1.50. You're hoping that rotation sends PulseX higher, and this might send it up here, right? Wouldn't that be great? So basically, if you buy around 0.25 and you sell at 1, you have increased your Pulse holdings by 4x in this unit of investment, right? So let's say you put in 100 million, you spent, so down here, you spend 100 million Pulse, right, to buy PulseX. So don't worry about the PulseX units, right? So you down here, that's what your buy actually is down here. When you see this buy PulseX into Pulse, you will spend 100 million Pulse, for example. PulseX, sorry, Pulse, friends. You spend 100 million Pulse to grab your PulseX, and then when you sell up here, you'll be selling 100 million Pulse to receive 4x PulseX back, right? So friends, yes, just the other way. No, that's right. Ah, man, we're going back and forth. You know, up here, you would have owned PulseX, and you'll go back to your Pulse. So that's right. So you can see how a lot of this, it plays on people's minds with all these ratios and all these permutations and combinations, yeah? That's why you can mess yourself up if you think you're too smart and you're playing all these ratios, you don't know what's going on, and you just go off emotion. It's so easy to mess this up, okay? It really is. But don't worry, I'm gonna be charting these all the time. So I'm gonna have the PulseX to Pulse ratio. That's going to be a ratio everyone looks at, okay? So it's going to be good. It's going to be in everyone's like psyche, all right? So this chart, right, we don't know where. So if we just delete this, you don't know where it's going to land at all. You just know there is a buy zone where you want to buy, and there's a sell zone. And anything else in between, we're just going to let it go, all right? So there's going to be other ratio charts and everything to talk through later, but at least you now know, hey, I have kind of a fair value of where I think PulseX is cheap, right, down here, and the opposite, where you think it's expensive. Until next time, friends.